and welcome to another episode of Game Theory, the #1 MMA DFS prep show in all of the land. I am your host, M.O.N.K, aka the Monkmatician. And in this very episode, we are breaking down all 12 fights happening this Saturday at UFC 291 in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Harvard out, University of Utah in.
We've got the rematch here, Dustin Poirier against Justin Gaethje. We've got Blachowicz against Pereira at light heavyweight. Green, Ferguson, Holland, Chiesa, Thompson, Pereira. The main card is absolutely stacked. Then we've got Derek Lewis against Rogerio de Lima. Gabriel Bonfim. I mean, the list goes on and on, guys. What a great card we've got here. Ton of underdogs I am eyeing this week. Be sure before we get started, hit the like, hit the sub on this channel. At the end of the video, we will have CM Monk's picks and the Monk pick of the week, the most owned, no nonsense pick of the week for UFC 291. So be sure to stick around for that. No use wasting any more time. Let's get right into the fights.
Showtime.
We're gonna go nuts in there.
To start things off, we've got a women's flyweight fight between Miranda Maverick and Priscilla Cachoeira. Maverick here, 9,400, one of the most expensive fighters on the card. In fact, I believe second most expensive, going against Cachoeira at 6,800. Before we get into it, be sure to check out the top line. All the stats that you are seeing correlate with the orange record on the top and the bottom of the card. Pro record is pro record UFC, L5 is last 5, and then exact is, in this case, 3-round women's flyweight fight. So you will see how many rounds and what weight class it is, and if exact is highlighted, those are the stats you are seeing on the screen. So we are only seeing 3-round women's flyweight fights. Now that that's out of the way, Miranda Maverick, decent pacing here, 3.32 points a minute, allowing just 2.62, outscoring her opponents at distance and barely inside the distance as well. 109.27 DraftKings points per win, very good, allowing less than 85 when she loses, so a decently high ceiling. Love women's flyweight fights. They make the optimal lineup at a very high clip. Looks like 53.63% overall. So 53.6% of the time women's flyweight happens, someone makes the optimal lineup. 55 bonus points per win on average, and 3 of her 4 wins at the weight class are triple digits. Love to see that. Only 42% takedown defense, but she does not mind working off of her back. Controls only 43% of the grappling time. 74.24 strength of schedule is very good. You want it to be a minimum of about 70. Anything less is not great. Anything more, pretty good. So her last 5 strength of schedule, definitely competitive here. 25%, so 1 of her 4 wins have ended in the first round, and she's a pretty diverse striker. Less than 60% of her strikes target the head, 24% the body, and 17% leg kicks. Meanwhile, Priscilla Cachoeira, she's getting outpaced everywhere, and it's not even close. 2-1, more than 2-1 overall. 1.7 points a minute scored inside the distance, allowing more than 7. Her DraftKings points per win leaves a lot to be desired at 97 here. She does have a very high ceiling, but that's because she did get a pretty early KO against Jillian Robertson. She put up 108 against Lipsky and 128 against Shayna Dobson, both finishes in the first round. Other than that, she does not score very well. If she's not getting that first round, first minute KO, she is not scoring well. 71.67 bonus points per win. That does have a lot to do with that 115 bonus points that she got for that sub 1 minute finish of Shayna Dobson. Controls less than 9% of all grappling time she's involved in, guys, and her strength of schedule leaves a lot to be desired at just 63.5. Kind of a headhunter. 73% of her strikes target the head, 21% target the body, and only 6 target the legs. She is 3-3 in 3-round women's flyweight fights. I'm leaning Miranda Maverick here. I mean, Cachoeira looked terrible against the major grappler that she fought, which was Jillian Robertson. She got subbed at the very end of the first round after trying to claw Jillian Robertson's eyes out. I think Miranda Maverick is a decent play here at 9,400. I think she will be able to get Cachoeira down, and I think she will be able to control a lot of this fight, possibly even finding a finish. But if not, I still think she scores okay. Her DraftKings points per win number is fantastic, and that 100 points in 75% of her wins is also another stat that I really like. So give me Miranda Maverick here, 9,400. I will be getting to a decent amount of her here because I do think she can finish Cachoeira. Even if this goes the distance, I think it can score well, so I will have her in my lineups. Cachoeira, maybe just a little bit, but I just don't see how she gets it done against Miranda Maverick here. welterweight fight between Matthew Semelsberger and Uros Medic here. Everyone I've seen on Twitter is on Semelsberger at about -140, -150. I'm sure the line is increased now, but he is only $8,600 right now, so I'm sure there's a little bit of line value there when it comes to DraftKings. 5-3 in 3-round welterweight fights here. Overall pacing is pretty even with his opponents. At distance, about a 1.3 points better than his opponents. Inside the distance, he is getting outpaced by almost a point per minute. 104 on average when he wins, and 127 ceiling is because he had a humongous win against, I believe, Martin Sano, who had no business being in the UFC. 126 is what he put up there. 102 against Jake Matthews, but then AJ Fletcher, he scored 62 points, so he's kind of, up or down here, but that's why he has such a high ceiling. 64 bonus points per win, 80%, so 4 of his 5 wins for Semelsberger have been 100 points or more. That is a great stat. Only 52% takedown defense, controls 43.6% of the grappling time he's involved in. Decent strength of schedule at 72.25, and 2 of those 5 wins in the UFC have come in the first round. 40%, love to see it. Decently diverse striker, 65% to the head, and the other 35% about even, but with the body and legs. Meanwhile, Uros Medic has looked pretty good recently, smashing Omar Morales. Lost to Jalen Turner by sub in the first round, but I mean, come on, that was Jalen Turner in 2021. He was beating everybody, and then his UFC debut, he beat up Elon Cruz in the first round, scored 121.68 points, so a very good average DraftKings points per win at 115. At distance, he's scoring 5.21 points a minute, allowing less than 2. I mean, he's over 5 points a minute overall at distance and inside the distance, outscoring his opponents everywhere. 80 bonus points per win on average. Both of his wins in the UFC are over 100 points. Controls only 27% of the grappling time. Not a great strength of schedule, leaves a little bit to be desired at just 67. Pretty similar striking numbers with Matthew Semelsberger here at about 67, and then pretty even with the body and leg strikes. I don't know what to do here. I think I'm going to play both sides. Both of these guys score fantastically when they win for the most part. Both of them have a great bonus points per win number. 6 of their 7 wins in the UFC at the weight class have scored them over 100 points. So I really like this fight for DraftKings. Also, Medic allowed 112 against Jalen Turner in that round 1 finish. So Semelsberger's pretty tough. Uros Medic is a finisher. Has finished every single one of his fights. Never been to a decision professionally. 6 wins by KO TKO, 2 wins by sub, and his lone loss was that submission to Jalen Turner. So I like this fight ending inside the distance. I like this fight for DraftKings. Screw it. I'm going against the grain. I'm picking Uros Medic here against Semelsberger. Give me the plus money. Give me the cheaper salary at $7,600 to get it done. That said, I will have my fair share of Semelsberger as well. Hopefully this finishes inside the distance and the winner scores well over 100 points. At 86 and 76, that's a great chance of making the optimal lineup. Flyweight scrap between CJ Vergara at $8,700, Vinicius Salvador $7,500 here. Let's start with Vergara. His overall pacing is about 4 points a minute, but he's getting outpaced by about half a point per minute there. At distance, it's better than 2-1 for his opponents, and inside the distance is kind of where he shines, but he's basically allowing as much as he is giving. Only 97.2 DraftKings points per win, 50 bonus points per win, and one of his 2 wins at the weight class did net him over 100 points. His exact record in 3-round flyweight fights is 2-0. He has 4 UFC fights, but he missed weight in 2 of them, and he lost both of those fights. One against Tatsuro Taira, and one was his debut against Ode Osborne. So let's be sure to keep an eye on CJ Vergara on the scales this week.
You ordered Diet Coke, that's a joke, right?
Safe to say if he misses weight, he does not generally perform too well. That said, his last 5 strength of schedule is very good for only having 4 fights in the UFC. Almost 74. As I said, he's fought Taira, Ode Osborne, beat Cledson Rodriguez, and then beat Daniel Da Silva as well. Controls almost 65% of the grappling time. Let's look at Vinicius Salvador here. He is 0-1 in the UFC, lost his debut to Victor Altamirano, no shame in that. Scored only 2 points a minute, allowed almost 4, got outpaced at distance, inside the distance, got outpaced about 3-1 against Altamirano in that fight. 86% takedown defense, and if I'm reading this right, Altamirano attempted 22 takedowns in that fight. My God, 22 takedowns.
Okay!
He only finished 3 of them. Salvador controlling only 6.5% of all grappling time he's involved in, 65 strength of schedule, and a pretty diverse striker here. Only 55% of the significant strikes have targeted the head from Salvador, 32% of his strikes landed to the body there, and 13% leg kicks. As I said, again, 0-1 in 3-round flyweight fights. I don't know what to do here, man. I need to see Vergara on the scale. I don't like that he's 8,700. Salvador could look okay here. That said, he didn't look too great against Victor Altamirano. I mean, he got outstruck by 15 strikes, got taken down 3 times, and controlled for 34% of that fight. Did stuff 19 takedowns, which is no joke. I don't know what to do on this fight. I think I'm going to fade it a little bit. I think it goes 3-round decision, and I don't think the winner scores very well. I guess I'm going to pick Vergara, but I'm not happy about it. I wouldn't be surprised if Salvador won here at 7,500. I just think 87 is a bit too much for CJ Vergara this week, although when he has come in on weight, he has looked decent against guys that don't have a ton of UFC experience, like Kletzen Rodriguez. Either way, I'm going to pick Vergara, probably fade this one a bit. Let's keep it moving. Here we've got Jake Matthews taking on short notice replacement Darius Flowers, UFC debutant. Let's start with Flowers here. He does have a Dana White Contender Series fight in which he won over Amiran Gogoladze. That's pretty good for the first time I've actually read that name in quite a while. Finished him via submission in the very first round. In fact, under 2 minutes. Would have scored only 91.84 points if you put DraftKings scoring on Dana White Contender Series fights. 1.51 points overall. I mean, at distance, he scored 0 points. Got his 90 bonus points. Controlled 85.71% of all grappling time he was involved in, which looks to be about 40 seconds. And then has a strength of schedule in his last 5 of 65. Leaves a little to be desired there, but not too bad. You got to throw these stats out for the most part. I mean, a 1-minute finish, I don't pay any attention to that. He looked like he had a decent ground game against Gogoladze. I don't know how that's going to look against Matthews, but I will say Matthews at 9,300 this week. 55% takedown defense, controls 57.88% of all grappling time he's involved in. A bit of a headhunter when it comes to the striking. 78% of all significant strikes landed have been to his opponent's head. Just 12% body and 10% leg kicks. Other than that, his pacing, there's nothing really to write home about. Less than 3 points a minute. At distance is basically 2. Inside, I mean, he's outpacing his opponents a little bit everywhere, but his DraftKings points per win, only 88.34. He put up 98 against Fiallo in a second-round KO. He put up 96 against M.O.N.K in a decision back in 2020. 86 against Diego Sanchez at 9,400. Definitely didn't make the optimal lineup that week. So I am worried about the $9,300 salary this week. I think it's a bit too much. I might have to lean Flowers at 6,900 this week just for DraftKings. If anybody's going to be landing takedowns, it could be him, although Matthews has landed 4 against M.O.N.K, 1 against Sanchez, and then 1 in his last fight against Semelsberger, a fight in which he lost at 9,200. So I think Flowers has potential to land some takedowns here, although I really don't know. If he is able to land any takedowns, I like Flowers a bit, maybe to wear on Matthews. But that said, I'll probably be picking Matthews. 88 points per win at 9,300. I'm not interested in that at all. His percentage of wins over 100 points, he's got 7-3 in 3-round welterweight fights in the UFC. Just 1 of those 7 wins has been over 100. And guys, one last time, he is 9,300 this week. I just don't think it pays off. I won't be looking for an early finish from Matthews. I would be surprised if that happened. Give me Flowers, man. Give me Flowers for DraftKings at 6,900. The pick will probably be Matthews, but I might even change that by the time Saturday rolls around. So give me Darius Flowers here. I think he tombstone pile drives someone on the regional scene. So that's enough for me, man. Here we've got Chase Hooper's twin brother, Roman Kopylov.
That man's an imposter. That man is the imposter.
9K this week against Claudio Ribeiro at 7,200. Let's start with Kopylov, who has looked decent over his last 2 fights, beating Alessio Di Chirico, finishing him in the 3rd round, scoring only 80 points, but then he finished Puna Soriano in the 2nd round after Puna gassed out, because that's what Puna does, 108 points, so did score very well in his last fight. On average, though, those two together, just 94. His inside the distance pacing leaves a ton to be desired, better than 2-1 for his opponents here, barely outpacing his opponents overall. At distance is where he seems to shine, although it doesn't really look like a lot of volume most of the time. Although in his 2 wins, he's averaging 5.29 strikes a minute against DiCarico and almost 10 strikes a minute against Puna Soriano. So maybe some improvement there. 57.5 bonus points per win on average. Only one of his 2 wins, as I mentioned, over 100 points. 89% takedown defense. That is a fantastic number, obviously. But he controls less than 8% of all grappling time he is involved in, which is not a ton of grappling time, just 17% of his total fight time. But still, less than 8% is pretty bad. 68.65 strength of schedule, no first-round wins or losses in the UFC, and a relatively diverse striker. Claudio Ribeiro overall, at distance, 4.33 points a minute, allowed almost 4. He is 1-1 in the UFC, and those are the stats you are seeing here, as I believe his last fight was at catchweight against Joseph Holmes. Ugly Man Holmes, as he wants to be called. 110 points per win. I guess that's what he scored against the aforementioned Ugly Man. 70 bonus points in that win. 75% takedown defense so far in the UFC. Controls only 37.5% of all grappling time he's involved in, and that is a bit worrisome because he spent 65% of his total fight time fighting inside the distance. A lot of that had to do with Abdul Razak Al Hassan, who controlled him for 57% of the 5.5 minutes. A little bit more even with Joseph Holmes. Actually, Ribeiro coming out on top in the control time in that fight. Just a 62 strength of schedule. Less of a diverse striker, but the leg kicks are definitely up there. 23% leg kicks is a big number, so look out for that from Claudio Ribeiro. I'm going to have to lean with Kopylov here. I don't know if I like it too much. Scoring just 94 points per win. Obviously, I don't know, man. If I knew he was going to land 10 strikes a minute here, I would definitely be playing him a little bit more than I'm thinking. 9K, I guess, isn't too expensive. I will have some shares of Kopylov this week. Claudio Ribeiro I will as well, because Kopylov has been finished once in the UFC, and I believe that was his debut fight against Karl Roberson. He was subbed less than 1 minute left to go in the fight, so I assume his cardio is a little bit better now, and he has looked decent against lesser opponents recently. I don't know where Claudio Ribeiro ranks in that on that ladder with Soriano and DiCarico, Roberson and Duraev. So give me Kopylov for the win, but I'm not looking forward to it for DraftKings. DraftKings GPPs, I would have my fair share of Ribeiro. I'm interested to see what his ownership will be. Fight the Black Beast.
What they know about them Texas boys.
Taking on Marcos Rogerio de Lima here. 8,500 for de Lima, 7,700 for Derek Lewis. This fight's going to probably go one of 2 ways. It's either going to be Derek Lewis early, or it's going to be Rogerio de Lima probably late first round, early second round, finishing Derek Lewis. So I love this fight for DraftKings. 8,500, 7,700. We're getting a deal on some sort of heavyweight knockout here. So hopefully it'll be in the first round, so it kind of pays off these salaries. Let's quickly look at the stats. Lot of red for Derek Lewis. There's a reason I call it the Lewis line at 2 points a minute. That is exactly what Derek Lewis's pace is. 2.03 points per minute in 3-round heavyweight fights.
Where's the rest? Yeah, where's the rest?
Not good at the Lewis line there. At distance, 1.31 points a minute. Inside the distance, he's getting outpaced by about a 1.5 points. Only 77.5 DraftKings points per win, guys, in 3-round heavyweight fights. This is over 12 3-round heavyweight fights in the UFC. 77.5 points. I don't want anything to do with this. I mean, 5 of those 12 wins have been over 100, so that's not a bad number, 41.67%, but he has a 54% takedown defense, controls barely a quarter of the grappling time he's involved in. Very good strength of schedule, almost 80 is the other good number on his list here, but as you can see, also a headhunter, and I know you see Derek Lewis throwing those head kicks in your memory. Only 4% leg kicks in these 3-round heavyweight fights. De Lima's numbers look much, much better, and that doesn't take much. Only 98, almost 99 points per win, outpacing his opponents 2-1 on average. Inside the distance, almost 5 points a minute, allowing less than half of that. Decent ceiling, 5 of his 7 wins over 100 points. 5 of those 7 wins have been round 1 wins. Every single one of De Lima's finishes actually have come in the first round, I believe over his entire career. Very diverse striker here. Just 59% of his total strikes landed are to the head, and the remaining 41% basically split evenly across the body and leg kicks. So De Lima's stats much, much better. Both of these guys are 38-year-old heavyweights. I think one of them is going to get finished here. I'm picking De Lima to win over Derek Lewis. possibly getting his first ever second round finish, and I honestly don't like Lewis's chances. That said, I do love the $7,700 salary, and of course it's Derek Lewis. You know, he's not going to win you any kind of minutes. He's not going to put up huge scores from just, you know, piecing you up, jabbing, countering. He's not going to do that. It's round one win or bust, and it's Derek Lewis. So I will have a bit of him at the magic underdog salary of $7,700. I'll also have a lot of Lima at $8,500 because I think he does get this one done early, and I like that salary at $8,500. So again, give me Lima for the win. Give me both sides for GPPs. Here we have possibly the better of the Bonfim brothers, Gabriel Bonfim taking on Trevin Giles. I'm going to keep this one short, guys. Trevin Giles' numbers for DraftKings are god-awful. He's getting outpaced everywhere. DraftKings points per win. He has 2 wins in 3-round welterweight fights, 65.35. That's it. And those 2 wins are Preston Parsons and Luis Koske, so not the greatest competition. He only put up 57 against Koske, 72.8 against Preston Parsons, so his ceiling is extremely low. 30 bonus points per win, no wins over 100, obviously. Less than 70% takedown defense, controls less than half of the grappling time he's involved in. A very respectable strength of schedule at 76.72, but a lot of that has to do with the guys he was fighting before Koske. Michael Morales, who he lost to, Dricus du Plessis, ever heard of him, and Roman Dolidze. That's right, Roman Dolidze back at middleweight. So that's where he's getting the good strength of schedule from. The last 2, not so much with Parsons and Koske. Other than that, I got nothing really great to say about Trevin Giles. I will be picking Gabriel Bonfim this week. I will have a ton of him in DraftKings, a metric ton of him at $9,200 this week. I mean, he's outpacing his opponents. What? One of them, Munir Lazez. You got to throw these stats out the window, guys. I'm not even looking at the stats. Less than 1 minute submission. Less than 1 minute submission over Munir Lazez. Fantastic numbers from Bonfim. The one number I will look at is his last 5 strength of schedule, which is not good, 67.2, but not bad for only having 1 UFC fight. Usually guys with a lot of regional fights have terrible strength of schedules. His isn't great, but it's not bad either. You know, only landed 9 strikes in that fight. I mean, like I said, we got to throw these stats out. Bottom line is, I think this is the better Bonfim brother. I'm going to have a ton of him in DraftKings. I'm going to pick him to finish Trevin Giles early, and I don't think Trevin Giles is going to be able to do much about it. So give me Gabriel Bonfim, 9,200. I think it's a fantastic play, and maybe we will see him come back later in the video. Welterweight scrap here between Kevin Holland at 8,400 and Michael Chiesa 7,800. Michael Chiesa coming off more than a 1.5-year layoff here since he lost to Sean Brady and Vicente Luque, back to back. But before that, 3 in a row at least. Diego Sanchez, RDA, and Neil Magny, so some decent wins there. Meanwhile, Kevin Holland is 3-2 in his last 5 with his losses against Wonderboy and Khamzat Chimaev, beating Cowboy Oliveira, Tim Means, and Ponzinibbio. The welterweight numbers for Kevin Holland are a bit up and down. Overall pacing, beating his opponents by a point per minute. At distance, basically 2-1, actually better than 2-1. Inside the distance, however, he scores 4 points a minute, which is great, but he allows 10 points a minute inside the distance. That's almost unheard of. Scoring only 90 points on average per DraftKings win, guys. 81 against Ponzi, 88 against Means, and barely broke 100.65 against Cowboy Oliveira. 8,400. Some of those, you know, the Oliveira score might be okay, but we're going to need more than 88 points, 90 points from Kevin Holland at 8,400 here. 61.67 bonus points per win on average. And once again, guys, these stats come from the only 3 fights Kevin Holland has in 3-round welterweight fight. Those are the stats that we are looking at here. He is 3-0 in those fights, and these are the stats we are seeing. Only one of those 3 wins, he scored over 100, as I just mentioned. 50% takedown defense overall. Controls 18.5% of all grappling time he's involved in. Decent strength of schedule, and very diverse striker. Super heavy leg kicker at 40% of his significant strikes. Michael Chiesa, on the other hand, at distance, obviously, that's not his game, scoring less than 1 point a minute. Overall, though, more than doubling up his opponent. And inside the distance, 420.
You are going to light these 2 ends while I light this end.
Points per minute, allowing just 1.5. Over 101 DraftKings points per win. And it should be noted, Chiesa is 3-2 in 3-round welterweight fights. 2 of those 3 wins, he has put up over 100 points. Spends almost 79% of his total fight time inside the distance at the weight class. Just a 45% takedown defense, but he does not mind grappling at all. Obviously, he spends 79% of his total fight time inside the distance, controls 71% of all grappling time he's involved in. A few tenths better when it comes to strength of schedule over Kevin Holland, but Chiesa is the exact opposite when it comes to striking. A complete headhunter, next to no leg kicks at all, but that is not his game. Chiesa wants to wrestle, he wants to take you down, he wants to grapple you, he wants to control the fight. And I think there's a chance he can do that here against Kevin Holland, who has shown extremely poor fight IQ in almost every single one of his fights. He basically let Stephen Thompson up after knocking him down. Like, why wouldn't you follow him to the ground? It's Stephen freaking Thompson. You're going to let him stand back up. Ended up losing that fight at the end of the 4th round there. I don't know, man. I don't necessarily like this fight for DraftKings. I think it probably goes to decision, and I don't think the winner scores well unless Chiesa takes it to decision and is able to grapple Kevin Holland successfully. If that is the case, then I really, really like Chiesa for DraftKings at 7,800. I think he can land at least 2, 3, maybe even more takedowns against Kevin Holland, and we could see that score very, very well at 7,800. So if that's the case, I want Chiesa in my lineups at that price. And Kevin Holland, I just don't think he's going to score well. I'm probably going to be looking to fade him at 8,400. I'd be interested to see what his ownership is, but I'm probably looking to have like 20% of him maybe. That's probably about it. I favor Chiesa for DraftKings. Might actually pick Kevin Holland to win this fight, but I think it's really, really close. So I'll pick Holland for now. That could change throughout the week, but my main target for GPP lineups is Michael Chiesa at 7,800. Here we've got Bobby Green taking on Tony Ferguson, and I say it like that, guys, because Tony is 0-5 in his last 5 fights, and now he's facing Bobby Green.
It does hurt, actually.
I mean, Tony's 39 years old, has looked obviously less than great, losing to Nate Diaz, Michael Chandler, getting finished and subbed in both of those fights, Benny Dariush, Charles Oliveira, and getting finished by Justin Gaethje at the very end of that 5-round fight. I just don't know if I can back Tony Ferguson at all at 6,700. First of all, that's the salary you do not want to play ever, 6,700. I think it's like a 4% win rate, 4% optimal rate. It's just terrible. Getting outpaced overall. At distance, he's outpacing his opponents, but inside the distance, I mean, it's over 3-1. It's basically 3-1 from his opponents. Scoring just 94 points per win. That's it. Decent bonus points per win number and a decent strength of schedule at 76. Obviously, with those guys I just mentioned, all top-tier guys for the most part. Controls just 12% of the grappling time he is involved in. 12-4. In 3-round lightweight fights, and in only 5 of those wins has he put up 100 or more points. Bobby Green, I mean, his numbers aren't crazy, but they're better than Ferguson's have been lately, at least in the weight class. About 5 points a minute inside the distance, allowing just 3. Does not score well per win, guys, only 93.8. Put up good scores against Hack Press and Al Iaquinta, but the other 8 fights, I mean, just bring the scores down. 93.8 overall DraftKings points per win. Bobby King Green here. 4 of those 10 wins have been over 100 points. Has a good takedown defense of 71%. A good strength of schedule, about a 1.5 less than Tony Ferguson. And he's a relatively diverse striker as well. Controls 61% of all grappling time he's involved in. 2 of those 10 wins have been round 1 finishes. So I'm going to have to go with Green here to get the win over Ferguson, the 0-5 Ferguson. I do not like Bobby Green for DraftKings this week. I'll play him in cash probably. At 9,500 though, that's a bit expensive. But for GPPs, I just don't like it this week. He could come out here and finish Ferguson, sure, in the first round. Do I think that's likely to happen? Probably not. I think Ferguson can make it to at least the second, maybe even third round. And Green, even with a finish at that point, maybe will only score, 90, 95 points and not even 10x his salary of 9,500. So I'm going to be probably fading Green at 9,500, even though it is a great salary to target. I just don't like how he's been scoring overall in the 3-round lightweight fights. Ferguson, I'm just not going to be able to get too much of him. So the pick is Green. I think he's okay for cash. I'll have a little bit in GPPs, but I'm going to be fading this fight overall. One of 2 back-to-back fights with Pereiras in them. Michel Pereira is taking on Stephen Wonderboy Thompson here, and I am on the dog right here. 7,400 against a 39-year-old Wonderboy Thompson. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Wonderboy can win this fight. I think it is a winnable fight for him. I just don't think it's going to happen here. I mean, overall, he is 7-3 in 3-round welterweight fights in his UFC career, just 3 points a minute, pretty much even with his opponents. At distance is obviously where he shines, 3.5 points a minute, allowing less than 1.5. But inside the distance, guys, he's scoring only 1.5 points and getting 5 points scored on him per minute, averaging 100 points per win over those 7 UFC wins at the weight class. 5 of them have been over 100 points, so that is a pretty good score. 61 bonus points per win. So when Stephen Wonderboy Thompson does win, he generally scores well. Just a 62% takedown defense, as you would expect. Controls less than 20% of the grappling time, as you would expect. Has a very good strength of schedule. 3 of those 7 wins have ended in the very first round. Let's see, he beat Holland, KO TKO at the very end of the 4th. Unanimous decision with Jeff Neal, and Vicente Luque went to a unanimous decision as well. So he has looked good in those 3 wins for sure, dropping 2 in the middle of those to Bilal Muhammad and to Gilbert Burns. Some of those were 5-round fights, so we are not counting those. I think at least 2 of them were the Neal fight and the Holland fight, so those stats are not included in this 3-round welterweight shot that we are seeing here. Meanwhile, Michel Pereira has some decent stats, especially when it comes to inside the distance. 8.23 points a minute inside the distance, allowing less than 3, and he spends 32% of his total fight time inside the distance, so not a small number there. 6-1 in 3-round welterweight fights. Only once has he ever gone over 100 points. 92% takedown defense, has a 73.5 strength of schedule, which is very good, and a very diverse striker here. So yeah, I love a lot of the numbers here from Pereira. The one number I do not love is the 82.66 points per win. He put up 74 against Ponzi, 80 against Fiallo, 91 against Price, 62 against Chaos Williams, and 85 against Zalim Imadev. So while I really like Pereira, I almost went Chael Sonnen on you. While I really like Pereira to win,
I can't let you get close.
while I really like Michel Pereira to win, probably goes all 3 rounds, and I don't see the winner scoring very well at all. While I do really like Pereira, I will probably be limiting him a bit in GPPs, but he's only 7,400 this week, so it kind of balances out. I'll have a fair shake of Michel Pereira. Stephen Thompson, maybe a little bit, but man, it's worrisome. He's 40 years old now. If Michel Pereira is able to get any kind of ground game going, this fight is over for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. So that's kind of what I'm banking on, a little bit of grappling edge for Michel Pereira. Hopefully we'll see him execute that, and we can see him get a decision win or maybe even a finish over the ultra durable Stephen Thompson. Co-main event of the evening, we've got Alex Pereira moving up to light heavyweight, finally taking on Jan Blachowicz. Closest lined fight on DraftKings, 8,200 for Jan, 8,000 for Alex Pereira. Let's start with Pereira here. 3-round light heavyweight fight. We don't have any stats, obviously. It's his first fight at light heavyweight, so these are the 5 UFC fights. Those are the stats that you are seeing in front of you here for Alex Pereira. Overall pacing, pretty even. At distance pacing, pretty even. Inside the distance, it's not even close. Better than 2-1 for his opponents. Scoring only 94 points per win over his 4 UFC wins against Izzy, against Sean, against Bruno Silva, and Andreas Michailidis. His highest score there was against Sean Strickland, which was a first-round KO TKO. He scored 110 points. Other than that, it was 92 against Izzy, 86 against Silva, 87 against Michailidis here. 57.5 bonus points here. Only one of those 4 wins that I mentioned were over 100 points. 74% takedown defense. Almost an 80 strength of schedule is fantastic. Probably nobody better unless you happen to look up right now. And a very diverse striker. 48% striking to the head, 28% to the body, and 24% leg kick. So some decent stats from Pereira. Just do not like the average DraftKings points per win at less than 95. Meanwhile, Jan Blachowicz, in 3-round light heavyweight fights, he is 7-4 in the UFC. At distance, outpacing his opponents better than 2-1, but inside the distance, leaves a bit to be desired. Scoring only 96.14 DraftKings points per win. Bit better than Alex Pereira, but not anywhere close where you want it to be. You know, you want it obviously to be over 100 points.
Triples makes it safe. Now, triples is best. Yeah, that's good.
Stop.
Only one of those 7 3-round light heavyweight wins has netted Jan more than 100 points. an 80.55 last 5 strength of schedule, controls just 35% of all grappling time he is involved in, and he is a bit of a headhunter with that legendary Polish power, which may not be as powerful as the legend has it. So, draw against Ankalaev in his last fight, beat Rakic, beat Adesanya, and beat Reyes, lost to Glover, as we all remember, and I wonder who Alex Pereira trains with most. That's a little bit of a wrinkle here as well, so I'm probably leaning Blachowicz, although actually maybe not. I think I'm leaning with the dog here, Alex Pereira. I'm just a little bit nervous of him taking that brutal KO, somewhat brutal KO, against Adesanya. That was April 8th, so right about 4 months ago, a little bit less. I think he's coming back a bit early against a guy who, you know, does have some power, even, you know, whether you want to call it legendary Polish power or just regular run-of-the-mill power. He does possess some of that. So 40 years old is a bit worrisome for light heavyweight, but I'm sure he's going to come in here looking exactly like Jan Blachowicz always does. Yeah, he could get it done here against Pereira, but I kind of am leaning Pereira just to be a little bit quicker, to maybe match the power as well, especially in that left hook. But that knockout 4 months ago really does concern me. So, man, this is probably a pick'em for me. Give me Pereira, and give me some of this fight for DraftKings, probably about the field, just because neither of these guys scores very well when they win, 95 points on average. Main event of the evening. This is one I'm definitely targeting for DraftKings here.
I love this stuff. Only come here if you like that stuff.
Dustin Poirier, the rematch between him and Justin Gaethje. 8,300 for Poirier, 7,900 for Gaethje. Let's start with Gaethje. I mean, overall pacing is about even with his opponents. At distance, same thing. Inside the distance, he's getting outpaced, scoring 4.6 points a minute, but allowing 5.7 back at him. 106.5 points per win, a very good number. 77.5 bonus points per win. Let's see, he's 4-3 in 5-round lightweight fights, 75%. 3 of those 4 wins over 100 points, 78% takedown defense, controls 60% of the grappling time he's involved in, 79 strength of schedule. 3 of those 4 wins have been round 1 finishes. 1 of his 3 losses has been a round 1 loss. 60% head strikes, 32% leg strikes. That was a ton of stats I just read at you, but they're all very, very good for the most part. I love the Justin Gaethje side here at 7,900, but I also like the Dustin Poirier side. 3.5 points per minute is what him and his opponents score. At distance, about a half a point better than his opponents. Inside the distance, much like Gaethje, getting outscored by about a point per minute. Scores 110.5 when he wins. All 7. He is 7-3 in 5-round lightweight fights. Dustin Poirier, all 7 of those wins have netted him 100 points or better. I mean, fantastic number. Just 57% takedown defense leaves a little bit to be desired. Controls only 41% of the grappling time he's involved in. Very good strength of schedule at 76. Did only score 66 points against Michael Chandler, but before that it was 115 against Conor, 108 against Conor, and 112 against Dan Hooker. I do not remember off the top of my head what he scored against Justin Gaethje. You know what? Let me go check that out. He scored 110.78, and Gaethje scored 48 points of his own in that fight. So a lot of points last time these two guys met up. I really do like this fight for DraftKings. I think you can get to either side very easily at 8,300 or 7,900. It's a 5-round fight, and those make optimal at well over a 61% of the time. Title fights make optimal well over 60% of the time. I love this fight for DraftKings. Final fight of the night. I think I'm going to pick, I think Poirier probably gets it done, but I really want to see Justin Gaethje get the win here. So I'll have a ton of both guys for DraftKings. Maybe a bit more Gaethje just because he's $400 cheaper, but they will be pretty close when it comes to ownership. Before we get you out of here, as promised, let's throw it to Monk and see what M.O.N.K's picks are for UFC 291. For those of you that don't know, M.O.N.K is this thing that I built that picks fights based on a ton of different stat lines. That's about it. And I've been keeping track of his record, and lately it has not been good. 2 losing weeks in a row. Last week he went 7 out of 15, 46%. Total year to date, 59.14%. Guys, my picks are like 2 or 3% better than M.O.N.K's picks. So let's go. Still close to 60% for something that doesn't even watch fight tape is pretty decent. He's got 6 dogs this week and 8 finishes. Let's check out what those are. First off, Uros Medic, underdog, decision over Semelsberger. Miranda Maverick, decision over Cachoeira. Darius Flowers getting his debut win, finish over Jake Matthews. CJ Vergara, finish over Salvador. Claudio Ribeiro, finish over Roman Kopylov. Gabriel Bonfim, finish over Trevin Giles. Marcos Rogerio de Lima, finish over Derek Lewis. Let's go, baby. Michel Pereira, decision, underdog decision win over Wonderboy Thompson. Michael Chiesa, finishing Kevin Holland. Bobby Green, decision over Ferguson. Alex Pereira, finish over Jan Blachowicz. That would be huge. And last but not least, Dustin Poirier getting the finish yet again over Justin Gaethje. Love these picks for the most part. Tons of dogs this week. Let me know in the comments what dogs you are on and if you agree with M.O.N.K. Lastly, before we get you out of here, let's throw to M.O.N.K. Find out the M.O.N.K. pick of the week, the M.O.N.K. pick of the week, most owned, no nonsense for UFC 291. Most owned, no nonsense M.O.N.K. pick of the week is going to be the best of the Bonfims, hopefully. Gabriel Bonfim at 9,200. I love this price for him this week. I think he can easily get it done over Trevin Giles, and I don't think there's going to be much resistance at all. I think he's the better striker. I think he's the better submission player, and I think he can get this done anywhere and early. So for 9,200, give me Gabriel Bonfim. Better value, I think, than 95, better than 93, better than most of these other prices that we can see. So give me the value, 9,200, Gabriel Bonfim. Most owned, no nonsense, pick of the week, UFC 291. Let's go, baby. Best of luck.
I'm honestly done. I don't want to read anymore.
We did it. That is all 12 fights broken down from a DFS perspective. Hopefully I gave you the most pertinent information so you can take that, pair it with your fight tape, pair it with the cappers that you watch as well, and let's make some money this weekend, guys. UFC 291. No reason why we can't beat the bookies down this week, beat up DraftKings a little bit, and fatten our wallets up. So guys, as usual, I hope all of you enjoy the fights. So, enjoy. We will see you in the next one.
I love this stuff. Only come here if you like that stuff.